Do you actually have to be on cocaine to be on this podcast?
It's a great day to be a Wildcat!
Durfing.
What's up, everybody? You are listening to yet another edition of Cocaine Willie. I am your commissioner, Bob Trollsby, and as always, I'm joined by my co-hosts, the good chef Andre Napier and Fireball Matt Marchesini. Tonight, with K-State coming off of a double-digit victory over UCF to open up conference play, the Wildcats head into a bye week, and we are zooming out a bit to take a bit of a look at the bigger picture in the Big 12 so far through one quarter of the season, rather. Who better to help us do that than the host of Big 12 Radio on SiriusXM, our first true Big J journalist to join the show, Ari Temkin, also a friend of Robbie Triano, whose voice is so eloquently saying, do you actually have to be on cocaine to be on this podcast at the beginning of our theme song? But Ari, thanks a ton for joining the show tonight.
Please don't ever accuse me of being a journalist. So it's great to be here. I appreciate you guys having me. Thanks for letting me spoil your Wildcat party with a little Jayhawk love.
It's okay. We're going to have a Jayhawk again at some point this season, so we might as well get it over with now. All right. First and foremost, this has been a super weird year for the Big 12. It's been a super weird year for college football on a lot of different levels. But whether it's conference realignment, whether it's schools joining or leaving the Big 12, some teams either under or overperforming when you look at maybe Texas Tech so far this season or West Virginia so far this season. How would you describe the theme for the Big 12 so far through 4 weeks of the football season?
Well, we haven't even hit October yet, and my expectation for this season in the Big 12 is completely and utterly dead wrong. And that is, so I picked Oklahoma State to win the conference, which I'm now reluctantly admitting, because I thought it was going to be a league of parity. You know, we'd seen that the last 2 years. Obviously, people expected K-State to be good last year. Nobody expected them to win the conference. Obviously, nobody expected what happened at TCU last year. And then the year before that with Baylor, they came out of nowhere. So kind of thought this was a league of parity and had been. And so major question marks around Sark and Texas. Can they close out games? They've had issues with fourth quarter struggles and giving up leads. You know, we don't really know much about Brent Venables as a head coach. So I kind of just went with, all right, and quite frankly, I did overlook K-State. I probably should have just picked them because they check off all of the boxes, but I wanted to go crazy buck wild. And 4 weeks in, and I look like an absolute moron for picking a team that looks like the worst team, one of the worst teams in the Big 12 right now, Oklahoma State. But it was based on the idea and the notion of parity. This is a league of parity. And I think, one game into Big 12 play, and I think it's obvious who the best teams are. And we'll see if Kansas really belongs in that conversation here on Saturday when they go to Austin as a 17-point underdog.
Yeah, speaking of Texas, most of the polls and power rankings out there are in agreement that Texas and OU, probably the top two teams in the league, at least as of right now. Thinking about the top 5 teams in the conference through week 4, where would you have teams in kind of that 1 to 5 slot?
Well, we power rank on Wednesdays because, it's not good enough to just have things in this world. You have to power rank them accordingly. And so that's what we do on Wednesdays. But I will most likely have Texas 1. And this is just based on what have you done this year? Probably Kansas 2, based on the Illinois win and strength of schedule. Probably Oklahoma 3 and K-State 4. In terms of 5, I guess that would be BYUC. Who am I missing, guys?
UCF.
BYU or UCF. Not Texas Tech, not Oklahoma State, not Baylor, not Houston, not Cincinnati.
Where would you put TCU?
Yeah, TCU is who I'm missing. Yeah, they're probably 5. Good call. TCU is who I'm missing.
Well, we're given those top 5s, and we're thinking of those top teams. You got OU up there, you got Texas up there. What's an Achilles heel for these elite teams in the Big 12? What you just said was supposed to be the league of parity. Where can Texas trip up? Where can OU trip up if not just beating each other?
I think right now Texas is in a different category than OU. OU can get there, but I don't know that OU's been tested. Cincinnati tested OU a little bit, but they couldn't finish drives in that game as they couldn't their previous game either. That's just a major struggle for Cincinnati, a team that has a really good running game but cannot finish drives with touchdowns. If you look at the Wyoming and the Alabama games, maybe you say you muck it up a little bit with them, get them to play, get them to get out of their game. But like, I would say the thing that I was looking for out of Texas coming into the season the reason I doubted them was based on their inability to finish games over the last couple of years, and they've done that. They did that in the Alabama game in a big way. They did that in the Wyoming game in a big way. And, after it's crazy because it's like it's still just week one of Big 12 play, but it feels like we already know what's going to happen now because we can be that much prisoners in the moment in football. But then also Big 12 does look bad, and not just look. I mean, it is bad. Phil Steele, I think, predicted in his projection that they were the 5th of the Power 5. And I thought, man, that's crazy. No way. And yeah, I mean, Texas Tech looks awful. This was obviously a team that a lot of people picked where I picked Oklahoma State. I mean, had I known that Oklahoma State was going to parade out 3 different quarterbacks through the first 3 games, I would have never picked. I mean, I thought they were going to Alan Bowman the whole way, and probably still not a good. I'm still not justifying it in a way that doesn't make me look like a moron, but I'm still trying to. I'm going to try to do that. So I think when you think about that, like, yeah, there's not many teams in this conference that are going to be able to do that.
Is KU not one of them? Do you think KU can? I mean, they're 17-point dogs, but is that the real test for Texas?
I mean, so far it is, and what does that say? I mean, in Kansas, it's a really good football team, and what Lance Leipold has done is nothing short of amazing, considering they were essentially an FCS team in the Big 12 for a decade. So to change that, have them be a bowl team last year is incredible. And where they are right now, it's incredible. And it's Leipold and it's Les Miles. I'm sure we'll get into this later, but Les Miles also gets a lot of credit for this because he built a lot of this roster, including Jalen Daniels. So it's perfect timing. But yeah, I mean, like, just from a talent perspective, I mean, you know what I mean? Like, that's how, when we look at Texas, we talk all about like the 5 stars or the 4 stars that they have. But like, I mean, Devin Neal is it in terms of 4 stars on that KU roster. Again, the game is played on the field on grass, but like that's just a huge distinction there. I mean, it just overall talent. Can Kansas keep up with them offensively? Obviously, going into the year, the big question with the Jayhawks was their defense was really bad last year. You lose some guys to the NFL off a bad defense. So how could you get better? But they have, it appears. Their defensive line has played really well, and I don't know that I expect them to hold Texas to under 30 points, but if they can do that, they can win the game. But I think it comes down to a team that is balanced in terms of offense and defense. I would have loved to see what K-State could do against them with Daniel Green healthy. I think that creates a huge void, which we saw in a few possessions in the UCF game where they were able to run right through them. So yeah, I mean, I just don't like. I look at the Big 12 right now, and it's like, Kansas State, TCU, Oklahoma, and even that's on a win for the Big 12.
Yeah, and thinking a little bit more about Oklahoma, I'm curious, what were your thoughts coming out of that performance against Cincinnati? Because I felt like there were a lot of moments where Cincinnati could have taken control of that game, and I feel like their defense did a relatively good job of stopping Dylan Gabriel in that offense, only holding him to 20 points. Cincinnati seems like arguably a top or a bottom 5 team in this conference, maybe worse, just based on what their expectations were coming into the season and based on some of the play calling decisions we've seen from Satterfield. What do you think Oklahoma's legitimate, or do you think that they'll find a way to trip this year?
First thing I look at with OU is their defense, because their defense was really bad last year. They did the Brent Venables switch defensively, schematically, and and we're just didn't have the personnel to run it, and so they were really bad. And you could just see immediately that like kind of a little bit like KU, obviously, with a lot higher level of talent with Oklahoma, that it's just like there's better personnel, there's more depth there, they play better, like they're already a credible defense. And that, I mean, SMU has a, historically pretty good offense, so they did that in that game. So there's some, not great teams, not Alabama or Missouri or BYU or even Illinois. If we're going through some of the better non-conference teams that Kansas and Texas and K-State have played. But I mean, Cincinnati is really good on their defensive front. Dante Corleone and that defensive front is really good. So the fact that they weren't able to score more consistently against that defense isn't surprising. And I think John Wilner from the Mercury News tweeted that there are 5 teams in college football right now averaging 45 points a game, and they are Washington State, USC, Oregon, and Oklahoma. So Pac-12 is really good, breaking news, but in scoring a lot of points. So, I mean, yeah, I think Texas is definitely like right now playing like a national title contender. You're a 17-point favorite against a team that's ranked 24th in the country and has, an explosive offense. I mean, so that says a lot. I don't think Oklahoma's proven to be in that category yet, but they're every bit a team that's going to be competing with Texas for a Big 12 championship through 4 games.
And real quick, also looking at the rest of the league, there are some teams who have overperformed to expectations so far, and I think of a couple at least. And there are definitely some teams that have underperformed so far. You've mentioned Texas Tech as one of those. Who do you think has underperformed the most to the expectations they've had, and also overperformed the most to the expectations that they had coming into the season, and then looking back at it through 4 weeks?
Yeah, I mean, so expectations. I mean, I picked Oklahoma State to win the conference. So based on my expectations, I would say that they're grossly underperforming. I think a lot of people thought Texas Tech was, I mean, that wasn't a crazy pick if you picked them to win the conference. I liked them. I thought they were a little bit overcooked after what, like, I liked them coming out of last year thinking like, oh, there are a lot of guys back. They could be an underrated team. And then I think people, like, it went so far the other direction. It was so skewed. And yeah, I mean, it's, you hate for Tyler Shuck what he's going through, because good kid, good player, and has just had some bad luck in terms of breaks. I mean, he threw a pass with his fibula hanging out of his skin. It was ridiculous. Poor kid. So, I mean, but yeah, Texas Tech offensively has not been anything close to, I mean, their best player is Taj Brooks, and they can't really run the football because they don't know how to, because they have too much of a passing offense to take advantage of the fact that Taj Brooks is their best player on offense. And I've been pretty disappointed with their defense. And we heard Joey McGuire talked about Steve Linton as a guy that was going to step in and be like, he said Steve Linton would become a 1st-round draft pick after the season. So, and McGuire said that before about guys and been right. So, I would say without a doubt, Texas Tech. I mean, Baylor is a team that I said before the season, like, I could see Baylor being an 8-9 win team. I could see them being a 3-4 win team. Like, I just didn't know they were such a wild card to me. And yeah, obviously, they played well against Utah, but I think that had a lot more to do with Utah's quarterback situation, which is not, they're 4-0, but their quarterback, they need Cam Rising back, because their quarterback situation does not look good really the last few weeks. So yeah, I'd say any combination of those 3, because when you look at it right now, like I had Cincinnati 14th in the conference. I expected, basically the newcomers to comprise the bottom 5-6 of the conference. And right now I would say you're looking at Oklahoma State, Texas Tech, and Baylor as certainly 3 of those teams, which is a huge surprise in total underperformance.
And who do you think is
over? Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously Kansas, because I didn't expect them to be really good on offense. Again, I was just very concerned about their defense, which was very bad last year, and didn't think was going to be able to get better, but has already shown, being a little bit better. So, and I don't think I expect them to start 4-0. Probably, you probably look at their schedule before the season and think you lose one of the BYU Illinois games. Certainly don't think they'll be 5-0. You can I think you could say K-State too, even though there were high expectations for them and it was completely reasonable to pick them to win the conference. Anytime you lose a guy like Deuce Vaughn, you're a little bit concerned about, like, okay, the offense was basically run through him. Like, the entire offense is built around him. He was the ecosystem of the offense. So, like, that's concern, right? Like that's concerning. You lose that, you don't know. But I had confidence with Will Howard back that if you're strong at that position, that's good. I'm shocked by how, I mean, DJ Giddens is unreal. Shocked by what he's doing. Probably shouldn't be at this point because they've been so consistent under Chris Kleiman, but yeah. And probably TCU. I mean, funny, two teams that had really good seasons last year that you shouldn't be low on. I was definitely lower on TCU this year coming in than I was on K-State. Not to say I was low on K-State. It's just hard. You won the conference last year. It's hard to back up those expectations with, losing the players they lost, especially on offense. Again, knowing he's the ecosystem. That's the only reason why I'm saying K-State in there. And it's funny because they're probably where they should be, or were maybe a little bit below expectation. Because I think a lot of K-State fans probably thought they'd beat Mizzou, but Missouri's a good football team. They're way better than they were last year, certainly. And yeah, TCU, but I still don't know about TCU because I don't, obviously I think they were blindsided by Colorado. And, it just sucked that they had to play them in the opening game. I feel like if they played them week 4, it'd be a different story. But their defense was so bad in that game, and there were expectations their defense would be let down because of the players they lost, and their defense played considerably better. So, that's the big thing for them moving forward is, will their defense look more like they did against Colorado? Were they surprised by that? And do they have a better defense than they showed in that game? So I guess and then the newcomers, Cincinnati, hate to give such a long-winded answer, but Cincinnati, like they didn't have anybody back. And when we talked to Scott Saffield at Big 12 Media Days, he said, like, I'm not even sure who's going to play or what we're going to run. I was like, oh, this should be fun. So, I don't know how good they are because their quarterback is not very good throwing the football. I think he's perfect for an offense that's really good at running the ball, and they have a very good running scheme, and they run the ball very well, and Emory Jones is a good quarterback for that, but you struggle when you're down, you need to throw. And because you just can't consistently complete passes down the field with Emory Jones at quarterback. That's what he's shown, unfortunately. So, yeah, I think that pretty well sums it up. I'm definitely surprised by the newcomers for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And thinking about from the coaching perspective in the Big 12, thinking preseason, couple coaches that we knew were going to be very much on the hot seat, Dana Holgorsen, Neil Brown. Neil Brown's kind of gotten some things going at West Virginia. I mentioned
West Virginia. That's a team that's overachieving for sure at this point.
Yeah.
They're in good shape. So yeah, I started off and I talked about, the Big 12 looks bad. And then it's like, okay, well, we're 4 games in, 1 week into Big 12 play. Like bad is only based on my preseason expectations, right? I thought Texas Tech would be better. They're not. I thought Oklahoma State would be better. They're not. So yeah, maybe West Virginia, is legit in a way. I think you look at what the Nico Marchiol thing, if Garrett Green's gonna be out for an extended period of time, like it's just really difficult to win games the way that they're trying. There are a lot of quarterbacks that are out right now that are missing time, that are injured. But certainly I would say when you looked at their schedule and broke down how many wins they could have, the game against Texas Tech was probably a loss. The Pitt game was a toss up. You figured they lose to Penn State. So they're trending better than I think what you expected preseason. But I didn't think they were going to be the worst team in the Big 12. And their defense, which just fell off last. Their defense had been really good under Jordan Leslie and just fell off last year. And so if they're back to playing better defense, that's another key to this, obviously, is over the next few weeks, we're going to figure out who can stop some teams consistently. In football, you got to kind of break it up in quarters. If it happens in one game, it's kind of an anomaly, can be. But if it happens over 3 or 4 games, now you have something. And so we've just finished the 4 games. But really, when you look at 3 conference games, I think that'll give you a pretty good indication of trends.
Yeah, absolutely. And the way that things are looking for West Virginia right now, Neil Brown probably got himself maybe a little bit off the hot seat, but we'll see, especially with the next few games that they have upcoming. But thinking,
he'll get the season. He's not going to be fired.
No, for sure.
So
yeah, for sure. It'll be. I'm very curious to kind of hear your thoughts on, out of the 14 teams, thinking about the coach. Some of these coaches that might be a little bit more on the hot seat compared to others. What school do you think is going to be most likely conducting a search for a head coach by the end of the season? Whether it's a coach that gets fired, retires, gets swooped up by another team. What school, if you had to put some money on it?
Who do you think?
I think it's probably Dana Holgorsen, with kind of how things look at Houston.
Not Lance Leipold. You said get scooped up, so I'm assuming you were. What about Lance Leipold?
I'm more assuming the fired situation. Lance Leipold he's a very interesting one, and I would also put Chris Kleiman in the same kind of breath with this, which is scary for us. But Lance Leipold, he has done something at KU in a very short amount of time that if you can replicate that at a mid-tier school in the Big Ten, or he seems like a Big Ten kind of coach. I don't see him in the SEC or at all, but I mean, if you can replicate that at Minnesota or Michigan State, I mean, that's another great example. Like he, out of all the coaches in the Big 12, if I saw a coach that was about to get swooped up and get signed, contract with another team, he would be probably number one on my list for that.
Yeah, I mean, so is Michigan State, is that job open?
I mean, not officially yet.
Not yet.
Are they looking for a new head coach?
I'm not a legal guy,
So number one, like, I mean, if Lance Leipold went and coached at Michigan State next year, I'd like, good for him, I mean, I wouldn't be upset. I mean, I'd be upset because he'd be leaving my team and he's a really good coach and I want him for my team. But I'd also like the fact that he took this job in the situation he did and then did what he's able to do. I mean, it was just continually redefining rock bottom, for a decade. They were literally about to break the record for most consecutive games not covered in the modern era. And then they covered against Oklahoma and then beat Texas the last time they played in Austin. It was unbelievable at the end of Lance Leipold's first year. I think in this day and age, being in lockstep in terms of the vision and how you're going to get there and philosophies between athletic director and head coach matter a ton. The money is obviously bigger and the stakes will be higher in the Big Ten and the SEC. That's undoubtedly true. When you're talking about, television revenue, that's 2-1, what the current state of the situation is. But, I don't think Lance Leipold would be at KU forever by any stretch of the imagination. I think Chris Kleiman is going to be at K-State forever. I mean, he and Gene Taylor go back. I mean, obviously Taylor took a risk in hiring him. There are a lot of K-State fans that are upset when they hired him. We don't have to go back to that, but like Kleiman's never leaving K-State. I mean, he's very much like Bill Snyder and in a lot of ways very much unlike him, but he's perfect. He could not be better for that football program and this time. It's unreal. They hit the jackpot. But yeah, I could see Lance Leipold leaving KU at some point. And, you almost hope it's in a situation where it's good enough that, you hand it over to somebody that's also really good and that he can seek, if that's what he wants, seek a better situation with more money that you could build up a Michigan State or an Iowa, whatever it might be. Right. And I wouldn't fault him for doing that. But he definitely, I think, is currently in a situation with Travis Goff and the direction of the athletic department that he agrees with. And, hey, we're going to build this new facility and this new stadium. And we're, it's moving forward in a way that if it weren't, I think it'd be more attractive for him to leave.
Let me throw a name into the hat for this little conversation that we're in right now.
Sure.
Gundy. I mean, he's been at Oklahoma State forever. Expectations are always sky high at Oklahoma State. I mean, they're dark horses every single year. He's constantly winning 10 plus games. Floor is like 9. Now he's in this situation. He's gone through endless amount of controversies at Oklahoma State.
Seemingly. So you're saying he would leave Oklahoma State?
Not leave. I think he would, get the Bill Snyder treatment almost, because with what K-State did to Bill Snyder, seemingly forcing him to retire, I could see that for Gundy.
How old is Bill Snyder?
I mean, he's old as shit, but I mean,
Mike Gundy's like 56. We're like 20 years away from that.
I'm not saying it's forced retirement, because Gundy could probably get another job if he wanted it, but I'm thinking Oklahoma State would be I think he's on a leash that's tighter than most would expect, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think this is, my God, a disappointing year, and the way I think it's been handled I just cannot imagine what he was thinking at the quarterback position. To be honest, I mean, they did win 2 games like that, but it just didn't feel sustainable. But I mean, he played in a Big 12 championship game 2 years ago, and they were in a BCS bowl.
But if you listen to any Baylor, Baylor radio or anything like that, once Dave Aranda lost those first 2 games, it was a lot of smoke for Dave Aranda, and he was just in that same Big 12 championship, and he won it.
I mean, he won it, but I mean, there's not much of a track record for Aranda. I mean, Gundy has a ridiculous. I mean, he's one of the longest tenured coaches in college football, and he has. I think it's like 7. I mean, he's basically won. He's been over 500 and been a bowl game every year he's been the coach. It's the longest streak in college football, longer than Saban at Alabama, in terms of like consecutive bowl appearances. So, yeah, I mean, look, it's fickle, and don't get me wrong. I mean, I think the other part to this too is you think about the decision makers. So, they had a situation where their former athletic director and Gundy would butt heads a lot. And there were situations where Gundy has admitted to looking at Tennessee or potential other options, leaving, based on his relationship with Mike Holder. But now you've got an athletic director there that is, somebody that looks up to Gundy because of the success he's had. So I don't know that you have the administration in place that would do that. It would have to be, become so bad for there to be a force out situation. But he's still only 56. And look, I mean, the guy's still. I mean, I know what's happening this year is not good, but I mean, he's still winning a lot of football games.
Shout out to Chad Weiberg, K-State guy.
Yeah, that's right.
State.
I
don't know what it is with K-State pumping out athletic directors, but you've got DeLoss Dodds, Chad Weiberg, Kirby Hocutt.
I used to work with the great Lynn Hickey, former UTSA athletic director and she was with she's a pioneer in played women's basketball and I think coached women's basketball at K-State. She's awesome. I mean, yeah, you're right. There's a Kirby Hocutt. You mentioned Kirby. Yeah, there's a lot of them. It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's fast forward to the morning.
And a lot of them played football under Bill Snyder. So I wonder if he did a few things right.
I think he did. Well, let's fast forward to the morning of December 2nd, 2023. Who are we watching warm up during the pregame at AT&T Stadium in Arlington, Texas?
Texas and OU, which is exactly what we don't want and exactly what I said wasn't going to happen. But through 4 weeks, I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm overreacting to 4 weeks, or K-State. But I mean,
that's an answer right there.
How hurt is Will Howard? That's not something that's going to get better. He needs an off season to get it better. You think it's fine? I mean, yeah, sure, it's fine. He played fine. He didn't look hurt at all. He did not look hurt at all in that game. I mean, he ran when he needed to and picked up first down. I mean, yeah. So, but those you get a week off in between, and you're only hurting it even more every week. I mean, it's a tough dude. I hope he can keep doing it because I'd hate, injuries suck. I mean, Daniel Green, that sucks. I hate that. You want to see the best players competing at the highest level. And I think it is a game changer for that defense, especially against the run, because he was just so good in that second level of stopping things, just cleaning everything up. So, but yeah, I mean, why not? Why would we think? I mean, all Chris Klieman has done here is won. So why would we think he'd do anything different, not get them a spot? But I mean, yeah, Texas, OU, K-State, those are the 3 best teams in the Big 12 right now. I'll throw KU in there because I went there and look, they're playing really good football, but they could get very humbled on Saturday. We'll see.
If it is Texas OU, the doomsday scenario, the button's been pressed. What is that? Is it just a perception, or is that actually something that could have ramifications for the conference, or is it just clearly just eye candy for all these SEC people to say? Look,
what do you think?
I think it would hurt the conference perception. Like, well, we knew what OU and Texas was, and look, they finally did it. And now it's really, you already said at the beginning of the episode, people already, label us as the fifth of the Power Five. So even with the Pac-12 dismantling, that could just put us bottom of the barrel again, and losing those and having them in a championship game it would suck. But I don't know if it would actually mean anything other than just, digs after digs just at our conference.
Well, here's the good news. will most likely bring in a huge audience and rating, which doesn't have a ton of bearing on the money handed out, but it would benefit the Big 12 from the perspective of the audience that it would bring. And it would be, I mean, the television broadcast would be on ESPN would be a SEC. I mean, it would just be all SEC all the time. It would feel like an SEC football game, but the benefits of the popularity of that game would go to the Big 12. But people are, I mean, it's fickle. I mean, the Big 12 has been one of the better conferences in America, and it's down this year. It looks to be down this year. We'll see. A lot of football left to be played. The Pac-12 looks really good, but timing is everything. And the Pac-12, had this happened last year, may have had a different fate, but it didn't. And I think TCU and certainly K-State, but TCU's run last year was so big for the conference, especially in going to market with their TV deal, with all the excitement with Brett Yormark, just perfect timing. That and the Pac-12, being so full of itself that it didn't accept any Big 12 members when they had the opportunity.
Where's the bar? Oh my God, embarrassing. That was so embarrassing. Yeah, no, I'm good. Well, so I do want to talk quickly about the 4 new schools coming in from the Pac-12 next season. Fairly exciting. Obviously, Colorado, Utah, Arizona State. What are you most excited for with these 4 additions? And is there a specific school or coach or storyline that you're most looking forward to covering when these schools do come into the Big 12 summer of 2024?
Oh, you're talking about Cincinnati, UCLA? No, I'm just kidding. Man, are there any teams coming in next year? Arizona. Yeah, I guess they got a basketball program, right? Arizona State.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd love to go to, Tempe and I mean, those are great towns, great college towns. Utah's joining. That's cool for the Holy War. Big 12 has lost a bunch of rivalries. So to get a rivalry is huge. Anybody else? Is anybody else coming to the conference? Anybody other than that?
A guy named Dion, maybe. Maybe not.
Right.
I don't know.
Maybe not.
Oh, he will. He'll be there next year for sure. Yeah, I mean, it's really one of the craziest stories ever. And, I mean, people want to watch it. And obviously the ratings for the Colorado State game speak for themselves. I think Oregon really wanted to do what they did to Colorado. Like they really wanted to, it's like in Fight Club when they're like, I just wanted to ruin something beautiful. That's what they did. So yeah, I mean, but I think their over under is 3.5 this year. So they've already won 3 football games. I don't know that they're going to win or be competitive against USC. I certainly hope so. Because that situation with Lincoln Riley and whatnot, but we'll see if they can be competitive, but they'll win 5-6 football games to get to bowl eligibility. And, coming to the Big 12 is a huge story. I mean, Dion is already recruiting at a ridiculously high level. Being able to use Dallas, where obviously he's got some interesting roots based on prime prep, the history there. But yeah, I mean, people are still going to pick up the phone when Dion calls, and some of the best high school football's played in Dallas. So Colorado is going to be in position to run this conference as long as Dion's their head coach. Now, he'll be there next year. I don't know. We'll see beyond that and where his next job would be. So I'm not even sure. It'd be interesting to see. I don't know that he's an NFL guy. I think his thing works very well at the college level. He's a great motivational guy, but I didn't think he'd work at all because I didn't think he'd be able to defer his ego. So, I was dead wrong about that. So maybe he's an NFL guy too. We'll see.
We shall see. Well, Ari, that's all the questions that we had for you tonight. Thanks a ton again for joining us. Let the people who are listening or watching know where they can find you and your great work, and plug whatever you want to.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I'm on Twitter or X, though I refuse to call it X. So at some point, I'm sure Elon Musk will make me, but today I'm going to call it Twitter, at Ari Sports. And yeah, if you have a subscription to SiriusXM, channel 375, we talk all things Big 12. I am a Jayhawk, but I stay pretty even keel. I mean, I'll get a little obnoxious during basketball season, but that's what the fun's about. But no, 375. And then if you don't have SiriusXM, you should think about getting it. So thank you guys. Thanks for what you do. And listen, you talk to a lot of people that want to do this and want to be on the radio or host a podcast, the first thing you say is like, just start doing it. And a lot of people don't. And so you guys, to show up, to have this every week, to draw the audience you have, it's impressive. It really is. So and thanks for asking me to come on, guys.
Yeah, of course.
Thanks, brother.
You on. Yeah.
Appreciate it.
And loyal SiriusXM subscriber here. So
I pay for it and I just don't even realize it just continually just comes out of my bank account. So I will actually tune in and find the show for you.
Tune in, channel.
That's amazing.
Channel 375.
Fireball Matt's oddly quiet here.
Yeah, I think he wanted to say something.
Still can't find the mute button.
Yeah, I can't find the mute. No, look. SiriusXM. I was telling Ari before this. I was texting my dad during this. My dad is a huge fanboy of Ari. Like he listens to Big 12 radio every day, and he heard that we were having Ari on the show, and he's like, "Oh my god, he's the best! Like he's the best. I love his show."
That's not what I was asking. I wasn't asking for what
validation.
Everybody else was talking. Do you have SiriusXM or not?
Well, no, that's where I'm going. That's where I'm going with this. That's where I'm going with this.
Okay.
Like I have SiriusXM in my car. I have a calendar invite every 6 months to call SiriusXM to keep the same deal that I have, so I can listen to Big 12 radio and ESPN radio.
Name your price. Let's go, baby.
That's how it works. Big deal getter over here.
Hey, that's the way it goes. And look, I mean, it's quality content. I mean, some of it, I mean, not coming from me, but a lot of other places, and a lot of people like Howard Stern. So, but no, it's the roller coaster that we've been through in the Big 12. Is pretty remarkable, especially in like Big 12 radio is 5 years old. And so like you think about just what's happened in the last 5 years in this conference, it's insane. Thought like the conference was gonna be dead and that I was gonna have, the channel was gonna be dead. So and we have some of the best fans and supporters and people that listen. I mean, we don't talk about ratings like internally at SiriusXM because I don't even know what the rating system is, but it's clear that there's, tons of people in this, in Big 12 footprint, the original, Big 8 Southwest Conference footprint that love what's going on SiriusXM Big 12 radio. And so that's really cool because sometimes you feel like the little brother to the Big 10 and the SEC, but the fans show up for us in a big way in the Big 12. And I think that's a metaphor for the conference to a degree.
Well, and you do a great job of representing the conference as you said. I mean, there are these perceptions about these other conferences, but there's so much with the Big 12, not just in football, but you get to basketball season and where the Big 12 is perceived very, very strongly. And people like you represent the conference so well and eloquently so that other people who may not be living in Big 12 country can get a really good idea as to what's going on. So I think we can all agree and say thank you for what you do. But
at the end of the day, we just tell dick and fart jokes for 3 hours a day. So
yeah.
Well, knowing Robbie Triano and knowing what he delivered to this show when we had him on the couple of times we had him on, it seems pretty par for the course.
Yeah,
dude's a budding star. Robbie's awesome.
He is awesome.
It's too bad he had to move to Chicago because we miss him on Big 12 radio. So
for sure. Well, Ari, thanks again a ton for joining us tonight. And
thank you for asking. Thanks for inviting me, guys. I appreciate it.
Of course. For all of us here at Cocaine Willie, thanks a ton for listening to the show on your podcast feeds or watching us on YouTube. Do us a favor if you're listening on Apple or Spotify podcast, leave us a 5-star rating and follow the show. If you're watching on YouTube, give us a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. Even if you're not a K-State fan, it will still help us. You can follow the show on Twitter or Instagram or follow us individually. I'm at Bob Trollsby. Fireball Matt is at Matt Marchesini, and the good chef is at Chef Andre Napier. Chef Andre Napier. Oh my God, Chef!
What the hell, man? Cocaine's a hell of a drug, baby.
We are all coke and no joke. Wildcat country.
Let's ride.
Let's ride.
Let's ride.